All right, let's get right into it. We live in a world that is literally built on words, right? We're talking posts, tweets, articles, comments, they're everywhere. But what happens when those words stop being communication and start being weapons? Today, we are unpacking a really powerful and honestly a very misunderstood legal concept, libel. This is the law that draws the line in the sand, governing what we can say, what we can write, and what happens when our words cross over from opinion into a full-blown attack.
And let me just ask you this, straight up. Could a single sentence, maybe just 280 characters in a tweet, or one angry blog post, could that actually ruin your life? The answer, from a legal standpoint, yeah, it's a terrifying yes. The stakes in our digital world are so much higher than they've ever been, and knowing the rules of the game, well, that's not just for lawyers anymore. It's for every single one of us.
So to really get our heads around libel, we have to zoom out for a second. We need to look at the big picture, the legal family that libel belongs to, and that family is called defamation. A good way to think about it is like this. Defamation is the entire forest, and libel is one very specific and very dangerous type of tree growing inside it.
So what is this forest of defamation? At its absolute core, as laid out in Article 353, it's any public and malicious act that's meant to harm someone's reputation. And it really helps to think about reputation in a concrete way. It's not just some fuzzy idea. Legally, it's treated like a real asset, like a building you've spent your entire life carefully constructing, brick by brick, through your actions, your work, and your relationships. Defamation, then, is when someone else shows up with a wrecking ball, in the form of a false statement, and takes a swing at that building, trying to cause dishonor, discredit, or contempt. The law's job is to step in and protect the structure you've built.
Okay, now we can zoom back in on that one specific tree, libel. How does the law actually decide if something qualifies? Well, it's not based on a gut feeling or how offended someone is. The law treats it like a very, very precise recipe. To successfully prove a case of libel, a prosecutor has to show that 4 essential ingredients are in the mix. If even one of those ingredients is missing, the whole dish just falls apart. And here they are. These are the 4 ingredients you absolutely have to have for libel. First, you need the act itself, the statement. Second, it has to be public. Third, there's got to be malice, or what you could call bad intent. And finally, real, actual harm has to be the result. So let's break down each one of these piece by piece.
Okay, ingredient number 1, the defamatory act. In fancy legal talk, this is the actus reus, which just means the guilty act. This is the physical part of it all. We're talking about the action of actually creating the weapon. Under the law, specifically Articles 353 and 355, this means writing, printing, or publishing something. Now, in our world, that's a huge category. It's everything from a traditional newspaper article to a blog post, a nasty comment on social media, a meme, or even a sign you hold up in public. It's the tangible proof that an attack was actually launched.
Next up, ingredient number 2, publicity. Now, this one is absolutely critical, and it comes from Article 354. A defamatory statement only becomes something the law can act on when it's shared with a third party. That means at least one other person, besides the person who wrote it and the person it's about, has to see it or hear it. And why is that? Well, because you can't damage a reputation in a vacuum. A reputation only exists in the minds of other people. So scribbling nasty things in your private diary, that's not libel. But the second you copy and paste that same thought onto a public Facebook wall, you've just added the ingredient of publicity, and the legal clock officially starts ticking. All right, now for what I think is the most fascinating ingredient, malice. This is the mens rea, or the guilty mind. It's all about the intent behind the words. And here's the wild legal twist that makes libel so powerful. The law automatically presumes malice is present in any defamatory statement. It just assumes you had bad intentions from the get-go. This completely flips the usual script. Normally, the prosecution has to prove you were being malicious. But with libel, the burden is on you, the defendant, to prove that you weren't, that you acted in good faith or had a justifiable reason. It's like a secret ingredient the law just automatically throws into the recipe against you. And that brings us to our last ingredient, harm. The recipe isn't done and the crime isn't complete unless the statement actually causes real damage. Let's go back to our building metaphor. It's not enough to just swing the wrecking ball. That wrecking ball has to actually hit the building and make a dent. The statement must cause real dishonor, discredit, or contempt. In other words, it has to lower that person in the eyes of their community, damage their professional standing, or expose them to public hatred or ridicule. The building has to show real cracks for the crime to be complete. So we've got the 4 ingredients down, but it's also really important to know that defamation isn't just a one-size-fits-all kind of crime. It actually comes in a few different forms, and each one has its own unique characteristics and is covered by different parts of the law. Let's take a look at what those are. The 2 biggest categories you'll hear about are libel and slander, and there's a really simple way to keep them straight. Libel is written, slander is spoken. Think of libel, which is covered by Article 355, as something that's permanent. It's published, it's recorded, it's out there for good. It's like a scar that remains. Slander, on the other hand, covered by Article 358, is oral defamation. It's more fleeting, kind of like a ghost. It's heard in the moment, in gossip or a speech, but it can be just as damaging. The reason the law often treats the written word, libel, more seriously is because it can spread farther, wider, and last a whole lot longer.
But wait, there's more. The law also pinpoints other, really specific ways someone can attack a reputation. Article 359, for example, talks about slander by deed. This is where an action, not words, is used to humiliate someone. Imagine slapping someone in public just to dishonor them. That's slander by deed. Then you've got Article 356, which makes it a crime to even threaten to publish libel, basically using blackmail. And Article 357 is about privacy, prohibiting the publication of private details that might come out during official proceedings. The main takeaway here is that the law has a pretty wide net to catch all sorts of harmful behavior.
Okay, so let's say you're the one being accused. It can definitely feel like the deck is stacked against you, right? Especially with that whole presumed malice thing. So, is there any way out? You bet. The law provides several really powerful defenses. Think of them as libel's kryptonite. If you can successfully use one of these, you can defeat the entire claim. Now, the first and most obvious defense that probably comes to mind is pretty simple. Just tell the truth. I mean, if what you said is actually true, it can't be libel, right? Well, it's not quite that straightforward. The truth is a powerful shield for sure, but it comes with a really, really important catch. And here is that catch, coming from the spirit of Article 361. Just proving that your statement was factually correct, that's not enough. You also have to prove to the court that you published it with good motives and for a justifiable reason. Here's an example. A journalist exposing a corrupt politician is publishing the truth for the public good. That's a justifiable end. But someone revealing a true but deeply private and embarrassing fact about their neighbor just to be cruel, well, even though their statement is true, it might not save them because their motive was purely malicious. Okay, the next major defense is something we can call the privilege force field. What that means is there are certain situations and contexts where the law says, you know what, free and open communication is so important right here that we're going to grant speakers a special layer of protection from libel claims. Article 354 lays this out for us. This force field applies, for instance, to a fair and true report of official government proceedings. So a journalist covering a trial can report on the accusations made in open court without getting sued for libel themselves. It also applies to certain private communications, like when an employer gives an honest, even if negative, job reference for a former employee because they have a moral duty to be truthful. In these special, privileged situations, that automatic presumption of malice we talked about, it gets switched off.
And that brings us to the third big defense, which is basically a direct assault on that secret ingredient, malice. If your situation isn't covered by that privilege force field, you can still win by tackling the malice accusation head-on. You can present evidence to show the court that you acted in good faith, that you had every reason to believe what you were saying was true, and that you had no ill will toward the person. It's a high bar to clear, for sure, but it's a direct way to neutralize the very heart of the accusation. Up to now, we've kind of been treating this like a legal puzzle, putting the pieces together. But we have to talk about what happens when the defenses fail and someone is found guilty. The consequences aren't abstract legal theories. They are severe. They involve the loss of freedom and massive financial penalties. This is where the weapon aspect of words becomes frighteningly real. And these penalties are no joke. I mean, just look at the potential prison time here. For written libel, a conviction could land you in prison for more than 4 years. Let that sink in. That is a huge chunk of someone's life. A penalty that's right up there with other serious crimes, all because of words published with malice. And even for serious slander or a slanderous act, you're looking at up to 2 years behind bars. The law does not mess around with these offenses. And then there's the money. On top of any potential prison time, the fine for libel can go all the way up to 1.2 million pesos. That one number you see right there,
That represents potential financial ruin that can come from a single poorly thought out publication. It's a staggering amount of money, and it's designed to be a very, very powerful deterrent.
And finally, just a few quick practical points about how these cases actually play out, based on Article 360. A libel case can be filed either where the damaging material was first published or where the victim lives, which gives the victim some flexibility. And, as we've really hammered home, malice is presumed. And here's a crucial point. A victim can file both a criminal case to seek punishment and a separate civil case to seek financial damages at the same time. It's a two-pronged legal attack where society punishes the crime and the individual gets compensated for the damage done to their personal building.
So, we've broken it all down, the recipe, the different forms, the defenses, the consequences. But these laws were written long before the internet, long before social media, and definitely long before things like artificial intelligence. And that leaves us with one last, massive question to think about. In an age where a deepfake video can destroy a reputation in hours, and anonymous accounts can spread lies across the globe in seconds, are these frameworks, which were designed for a world of printing presses and newspapers, still enough to protect us? Or are the weapons evolving faster than our shields?